Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 25th, 2010. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Mike Nealy, founder and president of the Malt Munching Mash Monsters, joins us to share his club's experiment comparing sugars used in Belgian beers. We'll compare 9 different sugars to see what their impact is on the sample brews. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Basic Brewing, all one word. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. And you can find our show page at basicbrewing.com/ or facebook.com/basicbrewing. Too much slashes and dots and stuff. facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we appreciate your support. And this week I'll feature a success story along those lines at the end of the show. If you stay all the way to the end, you can hear that. There are also associate links for Brew Your Own Magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. We have a lot of beers to sample, so I want to get to it. But first, an update from the Iron Brewer competition from the Garage Brewers Society. If you'll remember, the final mystery ingredient was potatoes. And Jeff Britton dropped me a line to say, hey, James, just wanted to let you know that Kent Critchell won the Iron Brewer. His potato beer won by 1 vote. Pretty good beer, too. So congratulations to Kent and the rest of the participants in the Iron Brewer competition. In the spirit of the Olympics, you're all winners, right? It sounds like a really, really fun event. Thanks to Jeff for the update. Now let's get down to this week's business. Mike Nealy sent me an email a couple months ago saying that his club, the Malt Munching Mash Monsters down in Louisiana, was conducting a Belgian sugar experiment somewhat along the lines that you've heard here in the past with Michael Tonsmeyer. He asked me if we'd be interested in evaluating the results, and I said, yeah, sure. I invited my buddy Alex Roberts, a Belgian beer fan himself, to help me sort it all out. Well, Mike Nealy, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you, James.
And here in the studio, we have Alex Roberts, who you've heard on this show before.
Yeah, good to be back.
Now, we've got you on, Mike, because you're the founder and president of the Malt Munching Mash Monsters.
That is correct. Say it 3 times fast.
Maybe after we've tasted all these beers. But tell us about Mmmm.
Well, our club was founded a little over a year ago. It started because I had been homebrewing for several years and had only met one other homebrewer over that time. And I get a little fed up with that. And I happened to run into a few other Northwest Louisiana homebrewers on various internet forums. And we decided to get together, and we set up a group, and people have been trickling in since then. And we've grown to a group of about 25 members, 10 of which we can count on to attend virtually every meeting. So it's a very nice group.
Well, excellent. And give us a little bit about your background. What do you do?
I'm a PhD student in microbiology and immunology at the LSU Health Science Center. So that's helpful when you're thinking about fermentation control and things like that. It's always handy to have a good microbiology background.
Yeah, and I was reading the description of your procedures in this experiment, and
right.
You're using some good gear. With you're not it doesn't seem like you're at home when you're doing this stuff.
Most of it is home, but it is nice to have access to an autoclave.
And I've invited Alex because Alex, you have kind of an affinity for the Belgian beers.
Right. Yeah, we were actually there this past summer. We stayed a lot of time in Bruges, Belgium, which was just an amazing place. And I'd gotten from my mom before. She had actually ordered me some of the Westphal-Trins and really started loving those. And yeah, I mean, now I got another membership to the Belgian Beer of the Month. It's going for another 4 or 5 months, and yeah, I really can't get enough.
So maybe your palate is tuned a little bit toward picking out some of these flavors, and maybe even comparing them to some examples that you've had in the past. But we are sipping on the Control right now, Mike. So while we're sipping on the Control and kind of tuning our palates, why don't you let us know what we're tasting here? What are we getting into?
Okay. Well, this was a pretty basic recipe. We really wanted the sugars to be the only difference between the beers. So we started off with Great Western 2-row. We used 26 pounds of this to make a 16-gallon batch. And we have a very light bittering dose with Hallertauer at a 60-minute addition. And from this, we got a 16-gallon post-boil wort, and we split this into 10 2-gallon plastic fermenters. So each of these fermenters got about 1.6 gallons. And the gravity here was 1041. And after we pitched, we used white yeast 1762 Belgian Abbey 2. That's the Roquefort strain. And after we pitched and 2/3 of fermentation was complete, we then added one of the test sugars to each of the 10 plastic buckets, with the exception of the Control. And for the sugars, we used corn sugar, plain corn sugar in one, the clear rock candies in a second, and then the dark rock candies, the blonde soft granular sugar, the brown soft granular sugar, and then we used 4 of the syrups that are produced by Dark Candy Inc., and those were the clear syrup, amber, dark, and dark 2 syrup.
Yeah, I'm most excited about trying the 3 of those that I haven't tried yet. I've brewed with the dark syrup, and we first encountered that. This is the 3rd Belgian candy or the Belgian sugar experiment that we've done. The other 2 were with Michael Tonsmeyer, and they were really eye-opening. And our favorite of those was the dark candy syrup. So it'll be interesting to see what we come up with this time. Right.
And I listened to those 2 shows, and they were really part of the inspiration for us doing this, because it's one thing to hear you all talk about what you're getting from the beers, but it's a totally different thing to actually taste it yourself. So we wanted to do that in a controlled way so that everything came from the same mash and the same boil, and the only difference was the sugar.
And you went so far as to really take a close look at the cell count of the yeast going into the fermenters. How did you do that?
We used a hemocytometer and a microscope to count cells after we grew up this huge 8.6-liter starter to make sure that we were getting the same number of viable yeast into each bucket.
And what were your fermentation temperatures?
We started off at the low end for this yeast. We started it at 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and then after the sugars were added when 2/3 of fermentation was complete, we allowed that to rise up to, we let it rise up to 74 degrees.
How long was the fermentation?
The fermentation lasted, let's see, the first 2/3 only lasted 3 days, and then after the sugars were added in the free rise, I would say it was probably done another 3 days after that, but we left it in for a full 2 weeks.
And we're tasting the Control, and this has no sugar in it whatsoever.
Right.
What are you tasting, Alex?
I'm actually surprised at how clean it is. Really, I would think with the the basic ingredients used, you would taste more of the yeast, especially overall. But I'm really not getting the typical Belgian yeast flavor from it. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of the lingering dry hops at the end, but not really getting a bunch of yeast.
I'm getting some cidery flavors from it, and I'm not sure if I'm assuming that's from the yeast because the temperature was not such that you would expect to get a lot of fruity esters from say a hot fermentation. It's a tasty little beer, but it's nothing too outstanding,
right?
Which is okay because it's the control, right?
Right. And that's part of the reason why we kept it on the low end. We wanted the sugars to really shine. So yeah, we picked up sweet apple maybe and some wine notes from that control, but
yeah,
really it was unremarkable other than that. But we're just talking about base malt and a little bit of Hallertauer here, so.
So let's move on up, as they say. Now, what are we drinking here? Number 2.
Number 2 had corn sugar added.
It seems to be a little darker.
Slightly. They both
Really?
pretty much resemble like an apple cider in color,
Let me pour side by side here. We have the luxury to do that. Well,
I'd say they're about the same. Right?
Yeah, maybe not as.
Yeah, we put all 10 side by side, and I would say the first 7 were identical.
Well, I'll leave number 1 out there as a control we can come back to. But I stand corrected. I guess I was used to looking at the thin layer of beer.
Right.
I kind of get a little bit of bubble gum in the aroma. You get that?
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely more. I get more of that kind of apple character with this one. But very clean.
There is late in the flavor. There is a distinct difference between the two. I can't quite place it though.
It may be a little hotter as far as alcohol is concerned.
I'd say so, and I think we got a little bit of clove from this one. Are you getting that?
Yeah, there may be maybe a little more spice in there.
But yeah, the apple is definitely more pronounced on this one.
Mm-hmm. It's not to the point where I'd say it was like a defect.
No,
it's more just kind of a nuanced, fruity character.
Right.
So how did you go about tasting them at your club meeting?
Well, we sat down with a judging sheet. We didn't really have anything to judge this against because it doesn't really fall into any BJCP category. But we sat down with a judge sheet, and we each discussed what we were tasting, and we basically judged it by committee.
It's interesting because it seems like the finish is definitely longer on this one, but there's nothing different that really should make that, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, they're both kind of thin to me.
Right.
But again, it's not the sugar doesn't come out with anything that really jumps out at you. My first couple of Belgians I made with corn sugar, and they were good, but I think they could have been better.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any difference between the two that should come from more sugar additions. I wouldn't taste any difference that I would contribute to extra sugar in this one compared to the first.
I think that maybe if you put the corn sugar into the boil, say for 30 minutes, you might get some more caramelization, from it. But these were put in the is how does an autoclave work, Mike? I mean, is it like cooking the sugar, or how does that work?
Well, so an autoclave, basically water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, so you can't get it any hotter than that at atmospheric temperature, at atmospheric pressure. So you have to increase the pressure in that chamber to be able to raise the temperature higher than that. And so an autoclave will raise the pressure up to 15 psi in order to achieve a temperature of 250 degrees Fahrenheit or 121 C.
So how long was it in the autoclave?
I was in there for 20 minutes to sterilize.
And did you notice any caramelization at that time?
Nothing appreciable. No, I didn't notice any difference in color. I obviously didn't taste them afterwards, but
yeah.
but no, there was no difference in color.
Okay, so what do we have for number 3?
Number 3 is the clear rock candy.
Now, this is the stuff that you generally see in homebrew stores.
Right. This is what we're used to seeing, the clear and the dark rock candies.
And this is essentially sucrose, right?
That's right. They take the sucrose from beets or cane sugar, and they crush this and dissolve it in water. They boil this down to a concentrate until part of it crystallizes, and then they can make a very concentrated sucrose solution and drop down cotton strings or bamboo to make a point for the crystals to form. And then you get these large rocks building up, and they can break those off.
I'd say there's definitely an aroma difference on this one.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out what to say about the aroma. There is a difference in the aroma. There's something. It's more interesting than just the corn sugar. But it's fruity as well. I mean, the aroma is fruity.
Right. We got the same wine notes and sweet apple, and there was some other complexity to it that we couldn't pinpoint.
I'd almost say the apple's kind of toned down on this one. It's almost being toned by the extra ingredients in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I don't get as much of the apple. It's a darker sort of fruitiness in this one. But this was just the clear rock, right?
That's right.
So just going from dextrose to sucrose, there is a difference.
Yes. And we got a lot more candy sweetness in the flavor in this one too.
Yeah. Now I don't get a whole lot more yeast character. Do you, Alex?
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's not like it's not more complex from that standpoint, but it's just it's a different kind of sweetness.
And that long dry finish is kind of being replaced by more of a slight fruity, sweeter finish.
Mm-hmm. The body seems to be a little bit more substantial with this one. Was there a difference in the finishing gravity of the 2 and 3?
No, they attenuated down to the same point.
Oh, it just seems a little bit more substantial.
It does have that impression. But we did try to ensure that we added the same amount of fermentables with each of these sugars.
Yeah, and how did you figure that?
Basically, we had to figure out how many points per pound per gallon each of these sugars adds, and then calculate that down to adding to a 1.6 liter batch. But this is all based on adding one package of this sugar to a 5-gallon batch.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the gravity contribution of each of these sugars differs, so we had to account for that.
So now we're moving on to number 4.
and
James, you might want
dark rock candy.
You might want to explain to the listeners we're not drinking entire beers.
No,
because they're going to see a 10-minute show on beer number 4.
No, we're taking sips. I mean, these are we're using the little 9-ounce clear plastic cups, or that you might see in a judging, BJCP judging setup, and we're just not even halfway filling them. So, we've got 10 of these beers to sample, and while I don't have to drive home, Alex does. So, now looking at the color in number 4, and what's the sugar in number 4?
This is the dark rock.
It's not that much darker than number 1. Not that much darker than the Control. Maybe half a shade. I'm picking up some darker fruit notes in the aroma. Maybe like some table grapes. Maybe.
Yeah, grapes or raisins.
Yeah. Oh.
Definitely thicker, too.
Huh.
Right, definitely thicker. A lot of candy sweetness in there. I think this one was more sweet overall than any that we tried previously. And a lot more fruity esters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is getting more into the
Belgian-y finish, I would call it.
Yeah, and there's more of a Jolly Rancher kind of a Jolly Rancher. Like, what flavor of Jolly Rancher, though?
I would say apple, definitely.
You think apple?
Mm-hmm.
I think somewhere
maybe a little bit of watermelon.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere between apple and watermelon. Thank goodness we ate candy as kids. Or still eat candy.
Although we didn't have blue raspberry when I was growing up, but that's quickly becoming one of my favorite Jolly Rancher flavors.
Really?
That and cherry.
I'm out of the loop. I got some catching up to do on the Jolly Rancher. I wonder what a Belgian beer with blue Jolly Ranchers in it would be like. Yeah, now we're getting more interesting. The first 3 were kind of not a whole lot of character, kind of cidery or kind of appley. But now we're starting to step up into something interesting. Something
right, definitely more complex. A lot more to think about in there.
Were you guys surprised at the amount of difference between the sugars?
We were very surprised. We expected the darker sugars across the board to contribute more, and they did in the syrup form. But really, like you said, the dark rock is starting to give you that hint of Belgianness, but really it's a shadow of what we're going to taste later on.
Now, don't spoil it for us, Mike.
Right.
Although I think we could suspect. And these aren't as high in alcohol as you would maybe see from a traditional Belgian style. I wouldn't think.
Right. We weren't trying to make 10 doubles or Belgian dark strongs or anything like that. Just what we envisioned to be a simple experiment to test the contribution of different candy sugars, but ended up being a whole lot more work. So.
Now, number 5. What do we got for number 5?
Number 5 is the blonde soft candy sugar. So this is one of the granular sugars, and you can also pick these up at your homebrew supply store.
Now, this is it's got a better head than the other.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe it was the way you poured mine, but mine's definitely having better head retention on this one.
We are back to, I think, around the color of the Control.
That same aroma from the last one's really starting to pop more. It's not a dramatically different aroma. It just seems more pronounced.
Now, I don't get as much of an aroma from this one as I did the previous one. But it still smells nice.
Right, I'd agree with you. We got less fruit complexity there, but we did start to pick up different notes, maybe a little bit of caramel and a hint of nutty aromas.
And this is less, to me, less cidery or less appley.
Right.
That's interesting. Now, what is the what's the blonde soft made out of?
So again, they just take beets or cane sugar, and in the Belgians' case, they use beets primarily, and they boil these down to concentrate them, and then once a fraction of this crystallizes, they will rinse away the syrup, and this will leave crystals that are 95% pure sugar. And if you want to make white crystals, you will repeat this process several times, washing away all the syrup. But in these cases, they will leave a little bit of the syrup behind to add some more complexity. So in the blonde, they'll leave a small amount of the syrup, and in the brown soft sugars, they'll leave more of that behind.
So is this essentially the same thing as if you took the clear rock and crushed it up? The blonde soft?
I suppose it would be.
So the same process, just different form, maybe easier to dissolve.
Yes, definitely easier to dissolve. And I'm not sure if you would get exactly the same characters from the two, but it seems like it'd be pretty close.
Starting to kind of get that warming finish, on this one as well. Kind of the warm alcohol at the end.
Yeah, I can. I'm starting to get warm myself.
Yes, that could be from repeated exposure.
It's catching up to you. Number 6. What is number 6, Mike?
And number 6 is the brown soft sugar, so this is the darker version of number 5.
So it's still a powdered or powdered product.
Right. This is still a granular sugar. And the blonde soft, the brown soft, and all the syrups, these are all products of Dark Candy Inc.
Oh, okay. And we should mention where you got these.
And yes, we should, because Brian Mercer at Dark Candy Inc. was generous enough to donate these to our club for this experiment.
Yay, Brian.
And I should also mention Nico at NicoHomebrew.com, because he was generous enough to donate the hops to us.
Awesome. And we appreciate you guys including us in this thing.
Oh, thank you.
Now the color.
I appreciate your feedback.
Oh, sure. Now the color on this brown soft is pretty darn close to the control. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised.
It looks like the head kind of went away quicker on this one than the last.
Now, what did you do to prime the bottles, Mike?
For bottling, we made basically a big batch of bottling sugar, enough to give us 2.5 volumes of CO2. We autoclaved that whole batch, and then we split it up into 10 bottles to add individually to the different plastic fermenters.
It was quite a bottling day.
Yes, it was. 160 bottles. That's a lot of work.
I would say this is really the first one kind of where that apple flavor takes a back seat. It's still kind of there, but I'd say the last one it kind of shared equally, but this one the sweetness kind of starts to take over.
Mm-hmm. But still, all these first 6, the differences between them are fairly subtle, I would say, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. I mean, in some of these, we're kind of splitting hairs on the differences between these. And I bet you if you mixed up the samples, you'd be hard-pressed to pick out the differences. Would you agree, Mike, or did you guys...
I would definitely agree with that. If you weren't doing this side by side, you probably wouldn't remember enough to tell the difference between these beers. But we're definitely splitting hairs here, and that's... unfortunately, that's a shot to the rock candy sugar industry.
Yeah. But I suspect it's going to start to get more interesting here.
I think so. We tried to, as we went along, pair each of these sugars with what Belgian beer they would make. But again, for the first 6, it was pretty much just adding fermentables.
Again, the way that you added them was different from how you would traditionally do it in the brew pot. But still, you would think that, or I would assume that since the character is so similar the way you added them, that maybe the way they would caramelize in the brew pot would be similar as well. That's just an assumption.
Could be. And actually, that's the next experiment to determine what contribution when the sugar added makes to the final beer.
Ooh. Now that would be cool.
That's my next project.
Number 7. What are we looking at here?
Number 7 is the clear syrup. This syrup, it resembles Karo syrup. Just looking at it.
Would it make a good pecan pie?
I bet it would.
Probably an expensive pecan pie.
Yeah, it's a little more than Karo syrup, but
now how do you say pecan, Mike?
We say pecan.
All right, good.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a tree right outside my window.
Amen. All right. I say the people who have the trees get to say it the way they want
That's
to.
right. Because that's a lot of work shelling them.
And I'm not putting a pecan in my mouth. I'm sorry. Now this one, this is the clear syrup, and what do you say? About the same as the control again.
Mm-hmm. I think we're kind of going back to where the apple flavors kind of take first row on this one.
I agree. Now these would all be good, in my opinion, all be good to make a triple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you've got a nice clean or a nice crisp sugar that wouldn't add a lot as far as dark flavors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had some too. They've also referred to as artisanal blondes over the past couple of nights, and really similar to this with a little more, spice notes, but same similar flavor profile.
And I'm like you. I'm kind of surprised that this yeast strain is as clean as it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have any experience with this particular strain, but it's fairly clean. But again, number 7. Not a whole lot different from, say 2 or 3, in my opinion.
But not as sweet as 6, I wouldn't think.
You think? Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. There are some interesting notes in there that there's maybe some bubble gum in the flavor there. Are you picking any of that up?
I get a lot of that on the aroma. I'm not really getting much from the flavor.
We actually got the opposite. We picked up less aroma overall, but we picked up more phenols in the flavor.
Did you taste them in the same order?
Yes, we did.
Have I asked that question?
Right. So, good point. After 7 beers, it may have been muted. I think on the actual judging sheets that towards the end, number 8 is funnier than number 7. It makes my jokes better.
Well, let's try number 8.
Good segue.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So number 8
I'm a
is
professional.
the amber syrup, again courtesy of Dark Candy Inc.
Amber syrup. Now, we're starting to get some. I'm looking at your cheat sheet here, and we are starting to get with the clear syrup and the amber syrup and the dark syrup. We are starting to get some differences in finishing gravity, though.
Yes, that's true. So all of the beginning beers finished around 10:09, 10:08, but the clear syrup started to finish higher at 10:11, and then the amber finished at 10:13.
Which would say that it's less fermentable.
Exactly.
Now we're looking at it's darker than the control, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole lot darker.
Slightly, right.
Oh, now Now this is starting to smell different.
Mm-hmm. Starting to kind of burn the nose a little bit.
We started to pick up a lot more dark fruits here compared to the previous beers.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's starting to get interesting as far as a more complex flavor and aroma. Something just beyond the kind of apple-y and light fruits.
Right, and even with the darker, like the dark rock and the darker soft, we still didn't pick up these earthy and oaky and dark fruit flavors.
Yeah,
that we're getting here with the amber.
Yeah, I think that if you're buying the dark rock, thinking that you're gonna get a dark, caramely, sugary taste, I'm not sure that you would, based on this.
Right.
Yeah, again, the sweetness is starting to kind of take over on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's less of the apple-y stuff. So what percentage of, have you figured out what percentage of the fermentables the sugar would be? Say if you were to design a grain bill or design a recipe, have you figured out what the percentage of the fermentables would be sugar in this recipe?
Our target here was to add 11% of fermentables.
Oh, okay.
As the sugar.
So that's pretty high, isn't it? Or well, maybe not too high. I mean, I've seen in Brew Like a Monk that some Belgian brewers report using 15 to 20% as a portion of their extract. But we didn't want to go that high. We didn't want to make a lot of phenol cider, so we decided to split it down the middle and go with around 11%. And I think this gives us a fair representation. Yeah, I'm starting to pick up a little bit of caramely stuff in there, or darker fruits. The apple flavors and aroma are more in the background.
I'd say getting close to almost being gone, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this to me is my favorite so far. Now we're moving into the territory that I'm familiar with, at least as an ingredient that I've used. And number 9 is the dark syrup, which I think was the original product, wasn't it?
As far as I know, it was.
I think that was Brian's original product. And this was the one that really stood out when we first, I think it was our first candy or sugar experiment with Michael Tonsmeyer. This was our favorite. And we were, it's a shade or two darker than the control, as you would expect.
Right. By our estimates, the control and all the beers prior to the amber measured in at about an SRM of 4. The amber jumped to 7, and this one jumped to an SRM of 11.
Now, after tasting all these and smelling all these, the thing that I smell was chocolate.
In this one.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mean, it's not real strong, but it's
there, right?
Yeah, there's just a note of maybe what's different from the others. It's just a subtle,
almost like a cocoa. Open a can of cocoa and
right. Oh yeah.
we got a lot more dark fruit from this aroma.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the flavor, it was nutty, rum notes. Again, the caramel, raisin.
Right. Yeah, the nuts and the raisins.
Yeah, I was starting to get a nutty character with the previous one, with the amber syrup. But this one it really starts to come out.
Right.
In this recipe, it's not. I'm not getting a whole lot of like a Brock's caramel or something. But it's definitely a lot more interesting, a lot more darker fruits.
I'd say the finish kind of has that lingering caramel flavor to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, this is where it starts to get interesting for me. And this is why I like this this product so much, is because if I'm going to use sugar, I want it to have an impact, a definite impact on the flavor of the beer. I don't want it just to be a lightening agent, although there is something to be said for that. I would like something to have a little bit more interesting character of its own, and this is very nice. And you guys tasted these sugars in their raw form, right? I mean, you guys had a tasting of the sugars themselves.
Right.
Were there,
as any good home brewer should, we tasted our raw ingredients to see what they add to the beer.
Were there any surprises from the raw to the finished product?
It was interesting. Like we saw in the beers, we didn't see a whole lot of difference between the clear and dark rocks and the soft candy sugars. But once we moved into the syrups, the clear syrup was again like Caro syrup, and in the amber syrup we started to pick up those caramel notes and a little bit of toffee. And as we moved into the dark and the D2 syrups, these were more amplified and more complex. So that was very interesting in itself to see the difference that the raw sugars had.
And these are, we should say that the body of these is more satisfying to me.
Right.
In that last swig, I got just a half a coffee note as well. So a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of coffee, some dark fruits in there. Really the most interesting beer that we've had, I think.
And number 10 is the D2 syrup.
Now, that's even darker than the dark syrup?
This is darker than the dark.
Darker than dark. And it is dark. It is definitely darker than the control.
Right, so this one weighed in at an SRM of 22 by our eyes after drinking 10 of these.
Oh yeah, it's worlds different.
Yeah, it is. It's plenty more darker. Plenty more darker.
I mean, you're moving into double range as far as color goes.
Right. And I think all of these beers could use some character malt additions. But
oh yeah. Yeah, but again, you didn't make the malt bill complex because you were trying to highlight the sugar.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's excellent. I mean, if I was tasting it, I would almost think I was drinking a double. Just as.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the mouthfeel and everything, it's all right on for that.
That's good stuff. That's you get the dark fruits. I'm getting like the brown, starting to get like the brown sugar flavors, and maybe a little bit of molasses in there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm.
And we still picked up the light fruits in this too. It was interesting. It moved from the light to the dark and was just complex from start to finish.
Yeah, and I would really be interested to see what impact time in the brew pot would have. I mean, because I don't know that. I just wonder if you would get those light, fruity notes after this had been in the brew pot, say, for 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and that's the plan. I want to take this D2 syrup because we found this to be the most interesting one in this experiment, and I want to try adding this from the same mash. I'm going to pull several different fractions to boil and add some of this D2 syrup at 30 minutes, 10 minutes, at knockout, and then again when 2/3 of fermentation is complete to see what difference
And when did
addition time makes.
When did you bottle these, Mike?
I bottled these beers on January 1st.
So still pretty young.
Right. I mean, they're coming on what?
Month and a half, 2 months.
2 months. 2 months, huh? Yeah, this is my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a great product.
I'm
very impressed with this syrup.
I'm going to have to get me some of that. So, I mean, I guess you guys were found that this was a worthwhile endeavor. I mean, was that the impression of the experiment across the board with the club?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's fun for the club to get together and do a big brew like this because we have people of varying experience levels. So some people are learning how to go all grain. Other people are learning different techniques. So that's interesting, and it's a good social event to, barbecue and have a few home brews while you're brewing. But then the tasting is great too, to really learn your ingredients and the impact they make in the final beer.
So when you have the barbecue down there in Louisiana, what do you do with the coleslaw? Do you put it on the sandwich?
Oh, no, we put it on the side.
Yeah, no way. No, I'm sorry, James. No slaw on the sandwich.
No slaw on the sandwich? Even you are against me on the slaw in the sandwich? Well.
All the slaw does is cover up for inferior barbecue.
Oh. I need Steve here. I think he would side with me with the slaw and sandwich argument. So are there? Is this going to influence? How is this going to influence your sugar purchasing decisions? Say if you're making a triple, what are you going to buy?
If I'm making a triple, I think I'll buy the clear syrup. It didn't add a whole lot, but it did give some complexity to the beer. But if I'm making a double or a dark strong, I'd probably go with the D2 syrup.
Yeah. And the thing with if you look at the numbers, and you guys are apparently, you know what you're doing as far as the the experiment design is concerned. If you look at the numbers, the clear syrup is going to give you a couple of gravity points, which is going to help with the mouthfeel of the beer, and in my opinion, with the overall experience.
Right.
It's very good. What do you think, Alex?
Oh, it's excellent.
I mean, you're finally, based on your knowledge of Belgian beers, what impressions can you pull out of this experience?
Well, I'd say that last one we had, it's definitely it's there. It's you would taste that. I mean, without knowing what it was, and you would think you're drinking a Belgian beer at that point.
That was very nice. Well, Mike, this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate it, and a lot of work on your part. And I appreciate the amount of detail that you went into describing the experiment in the write-up that you gave us, and the amount of precision, I guess, in the methodology that you used. And I appreciate very much you and the rest of the club, the Malt Munching Mash Monsters. I appreciate you guys including us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, James. And I should note that I'm not the only scientist in the group. A lot of our members come from the LSU hospital here with strong science backgrounds. So that gave us the ability to design a controlled experiment.
Awesome. Well, I should mention your website, maltmunchingmashmonsters.com.
That's right.
Which is one of the longer URLs I've seen, or longer domain names I've seen in a little while.
If that's too much to type, you can call 318-759-POUR, P-O-U-R.
Operators are standing by.
That's right.
Well, guys, Alex and Mike, I appreciate your help. Once
again.
Mike,
thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Alex.
Well, thanks again to Mike, Alex, and the rest of the Malt Munching Mash Monsters for the help. Mike wanted me to thank Jeff Pieper and Steve Long for brewing the batches of beer, and for helping in the giant bottling day. He wanted to thank Marvin Crane and Sybil Pardue, and we want to thank them as well. I'm looking forward to hearing and hopefully tasting the results of the boil length experiment to see how time in the kettle affects the characters of the sugar. I was very surprised at how similar many of these sugars were in the conditions of this experiment. It's something that you might want to try yourself. It'll give you an excuse to play with sugar and to brew and to taste some tasty Belgian beers. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our 2010 Brewers Logbooks, we've still got some. We've also got our new Reinheitsgebot is a 4-letter word shirts in our shop as well. You can check out our homebrewing DVDs, Introduction to Extract Homebrewing, Stepping into All-Grain, Low-Tech Lagering, and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits as well. And you can find combo deals to save you a few bucks on our site. You can also see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Smart Strip LCG3 Energy Saving Surge Protector with Auto Switching Technology, 10 outlet, and Fun Fly Stick. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We appreciate your support. And I can't tell who bought what unless you write me and tell me that you bought something. I got an email after last week's show from a listener who said, just finished listening to the latest podcast all the way to the end and heard that my purchase on Amazon was mentioned. I was just about to proceed to check out when my mind screamed, wait! I backtracked, closed the window, and logged on to basicbrewing.com and clicked on the associate link for Amazon.com, and then proceeded to complete my purchase of the Bowflex Blaze. So thank you very, very much. You know who you are. I don't want to say your name because, I don't want to. I think that your purchase decisions should be private. But we very much appreciate your support. That's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson down in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.